hour, the New York Times issuing a correction over an article on famine in Gaza, which featured this viral image of a young boy.
So they originally wrote that he was starving, malnutrition. But they recently issued an editor's note saying the child also has a pre-existing muscle condition.
Lucas Tomlinson is live in Washington with the latest details on this story. Good morning, Lucas.
Good morning, Lawrence. Images of civilians in Gaza drawing increased attention from around the world following the October 7th massacre, which killed 1,200 Israelis, where 20 hostages remain alive today. The New York Times reports Gazans are dying of starvation. And, quote, here is the headline, guys. After 21 months of devastating conflict with Israel, Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, the young, the old, and the sick, are facing what aid groups say is impending famine. And as you mentioned off the top, this photo of an 18-month-old has drawn attention. Now the New York Times updating its piece with an editor's note, saying the child, while suffering from severe malnutrition, also had, quote, a pre-existing health problems. A statement on the Times PR handle on X says, quote, we recently ran a story about Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, including Mohammed Zakaria al-Muktawak, who is about 18 months old and suffers from severe malnutrition. We have since learned new information, including from the hospital that treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems. This additional detail gives readers a greater understanding of his situation. Our reporters and photographers continue to report from Gaza bravely, sensitively, and at personal risk so that readers can see firsthand the consequences of the war. Now, Fox's Brit Hume responded, weak tea. The Times made a glaring mistake and can't admit that without praising itself for bravery, sensitivity, and personal risk. And Senator Tom Cotton says, quote, Israel has no responsibility to provide any kind of aid into Gaza. They are repeatedly held to a different standard than the rest of the world. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, quote, there is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. Guys?
All right. Thanks so much, Lucas. Appreciate it. They are getting a ton of aid in there now, and it is flowing in. But I think people are missing the bigger picture, and I think Ambassador Huckabee nailed it. The only why with all this outrage does anyone not bring up the fact that Hamas 3 times in a row has walked away from negotiations, refusing to acquiesce or cut a deal. If they cared about their people, they would do that. But instead, they want to hang out. They don't even care if Israel takes back Gaza. They say, we're going to be snipers. We're going to put IEDs in the road. That is not a group of people that care about the Palestinian people. But it didn't stop Prime Minister Starmer from coming out and saying, if they don't find a way to get more aid in there, I'm going to recognize a Palestinian state. Where is this state? It doesn't exist, and they don't want it. They want all of Israel.
You know, as it relates to the war propaganda, Israel is losing it when it comes to the Gaza story right here. People just believe everything that is put out there, the images. I mean, they may put a editor's note on there, but the damage has already been done. I even talked with some of my friends. They don't know the full story about what Hamas is doing, taking some of the aid away. And so I just think we as a country and our press should be a little bit more responsible to tell the full story here. War is messy. It's complicated. And you got a terrorist organization that is invoking harm on their own people. But that part of the story is not told.
Well, you had Benjamin Netanyahu saying nobody's being starved, and then you had Donald Trump saying the pictures don't lie. We've seen these pictures. The U.S. is going to help. We're going to send in food and other aid to these families because he said starvation is a problem. Then we find out the picture that's been circulating all around the media has to be corrected because the child, according to Israel's foreign minister, suffers from cerebral palsy and genetic disorders, and said the media chose to use the photo to promote a narrative of mass starvation in Gaza. The Israeli consulate general in New York calls this Hamas propaganda. They said first they publish, then they verify, if they verify at all. And Israel issued the picture of the mom holding the child with the child's brother standing next to the bed, and the mom and the brother look perfectly healthy. It's the little boy that has the genetic disorder that you can see his bones and
Look,
his hips.
There's no doubt getting aid in is a challenge, but they have put enough aid into Israel to feed them, into Gaza to feed them for 15 years. It is just not getting to the right people. And there was a report over the weekend that Israel says they have no proof that Hamas is taking the aid from the Palestinian people. And I've seen video, even anecdotal information, you could see them giving them water, having a kid walk with it, and then they grab the water back. You see this video online. So I would like another side of that story, because people just say it like they have no proof of it, when we see countless times Hamas grabs the aid and they try to sell it to the Palestinian people who have no money. And they know when these images are out there, pressure goes on Israel to end the conflict.
Right. I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.